All right, good. This is exciting. We got a great group here. This is the first that I know of PWQA virtual barbecue and legislative event. And we appreciate you all taking an hour out of your valuable time to be with us today to talk about water-related issues, our industry in general, and how we are reacting to the interesting year that we're having. My daughter got a hold of a t-shirt. It says 2020, 1 star, do not recommend. And I'm feeling there's a lot of that sentiment for this year, let me tell you. So I'm very pleased to introduce the PWQA board. Board members, wave at everybody, say hi. I'm not going to take the time to recognize each and every one of you by name, but I want to express again my personal gratitude for everybody who sacrifices their time, talents, and energy in supporting the PWQA and our efforts in representing the water quality industry and helping consumers get better, easier, smarter access to cheap, safe, and affordable, high-quality H2O. We're particularly excited to invite 2 guests. We have Dave Loveday. Dave, wave at the beautiful people. And we have Randy Pollack, sporting his COVID hairstyle, which I'm really envious of. I can barely grow any. And we will hopefully, depending on what's going on with the shenanigans with the fire, we'll hopefully have Senator Dodd with us as well, but we completely understand if he can't join us. He is representing the people up there, and they got problems. So today's agenda, we're going to, after I finish introducing you, Irma's going to take a few minutes and introduce the sponsors and share some thoughts. And we're going to make sure that we are careful with your time. We don't want to be waffling on for too long. I know you all have things to do, but we've got some important stuff to share, particularly the WQA updates and Randy's updates. And then we're going to have a little technical education about perfluorinated alkyl compounds. We're going to beat WQA up to give us some seat time for this. But with or without seat time, there's some valuable things to learn and understand about what's going on in our industry right now and what's coming down the pipeline as far as regulations and just the general sentiment for managing these PFCs and PFASs. And Dave, I think you're going to touch a little on that to a degree as well as we talk about the SAFER program. So Irma, would you mind taking a moment to talk about our sponsors, please?
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg. You know, I want to really take some time and show my appreciation as well as, you know, everyone here at PWQA in thanking the sponsors and just doing a great job in getting this legislative virtual barbecue going. So Crusader Water Systems, thank you. Aero Industries, Press, Vertex Water Products, Halls Culligan, Good Water Warehouse, Chester Paul, Resin Tech, Impact Water, WCMP, and Pentair. So thank you all. Appreciate it, everything that you guys are doing. And, you know, we couldn't do it without you. So thank you for making this happen.
Yeah, I concur. It's fantastic to have support from both dealers, consultants, engineers, and product vendors and distributors and manufacturers. We all rise together. As an industry, we all have similar goals and we all have our own individual problems and complications that we need to worry about. But really, at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we are working together for the betterment of our industry and for that end goal, which is to help people get better quality water. So a few announcements to talk about. The first is, in fact, Geneva, would you mind screen sharing? In fact, I can share it myself, huh? So the first thing for everyone to see, hopefully you can see my screen, will be the PWQA convention and trade show is going to be virtual this year. We're going all virtual all the time. We have October 8th and 9th as the calendar scheduled dates. And we're going to stay with those dates. We might, however, depending on which education programs we approve, we might have an additional educational overflow. We've had a significant amount of vendor and manufacturer interest in participating in this event with the virtual education, which is very exciting to us. So you'll still be able to get a lot of quality business, technical, and general education. You're also going to be able to have some networking events. We're going to experiment with some exciting exhibit options for the vendors. And we'll have more information coming shortly as far as the final schedule and shakeout of it. Our ever dynamic and resourceful Joyce Takeda is leading the convention committee, and she's doing a phenomenal job. And we've got some great stuff coming up. It's going to be just fantastic. So keep that on your calendars. We won't be spending all day online. We'll be spending some short bursts of action-packed time. Everything will be recorded, and attendees will be able to watch the recordings afterwards. So you're not going to miss anything if you can't be there live. However, for some of those interesting live events, yeah, you might miss it if you're not live. So when the live events are on, you probably want to be there because there'll be drawings and raffles and all kinds of fun things that are coming up. Next thing is, all of our members, you will have received by now a number of constant contact emails. Those emails are through PWQA. Please make sure that you add PWQA to your safe senders list. We're getting a fair amount of emails that bounce back. We don't spam anyone. We make sure that you're only getting the good stuff. And the announcements are industry related, education related, and legislative activism related. So it's really important when you get those, take a minute, read through them, please. Next thing to share is the website. When you get a chance, those of you that are members, log on to the website, pwqa.org. And then from there, as a member, you can then manage your account. You just go to members, click on manage your account, and then you put your sign-in information in. If you don't have it, give our office a call or send an email to info@pwqa.org. You'll then be able to get your sign-in info and update your profile. Now, what's really neat about the website now is everybody who is a member in good standing is listed, and you have the ability to customize your profile so that you can then, when a consumer is looking for good quality water treatment providers, they're able to find you through the PWQA website, and that helps your organic search results. That's a really good thing. And then as an extension to that, those of you that use the social media, please go to our Facebook page. It's Pacific Water Quality Association, PWQA Water, and follow it. There's a lot of really good information there for you. We're constantly updating it. Sign up for the updates. And again, you're not going to get spammed or anything, but you will get a lot of good, relevant industry information. Same with LinkedIn. If you use LinkedIn, PWQA has a really good LinkedIn page, also updated frequently. And that's just linkedin.com, and the page is PWQA. So easy to find. Being engaged and connected with all of these online resources helps you, especially if you're trying to market your business. It helps you get your name and reputation out there, and it helps people know that you're committed to excellence as a PWQA member. And the last thing, which is related, Patricia is looking for dealers who are excited to be featured in our member spotlight. The member spotlight is part of our newsletter. So if you are proud of who you are and your business, which I assume is all of us, drop Patricia a line. You can just contact her right through info@pwqa.org. And she will be happy to do an interview with you so that we can promote your business appropriately through the PWQA newsletter. And then as WCNP magazine can, they will then extend that through and promote you in their magazine as well, highlighting your story, how you got into water, why you do water, what you like about it, what you don't like about it, and how you do the great job that you do serving your customers. So those are my introductory thoughts and everything that I think is important for us to share right now. Irma has some thoughts for you, if you're ready, Irma.
Sure. Thanks, Greg. You know, Greg is our technical guru, so I thank Greg for everything that he does, especially with our education. I know PWQA is going to be our convention, virtual convention is going to be an exciting event, and I'm really looking forward to that. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on with COVID, and that's in regards to a little bit about our mental health. I think there's a lot of fear and anxiety about COVID-19 in general. There's a lot of strong emotions that can be overwhelming, and even workplace stress can lead to some burnout. So how we cope with these emotions and stress can affect, obviously, our well-being and the well-being of our people. And so as leaders, it's important that we recognize what stress looks like in our workplace, and that we take certain steps, again, as leaders, to build the resilience and be able to manage, you know, job stress, and how we go about getting help for others. So, so I wanted to go through a couple little topics here that you know, we've gone over in with our meetings with our folks, and it's just more talking about it. As leaders, we can't forget. I understand that we're all stressed at all times, but we also still have to continue to communicate with our employees, and two-way communication is essential during this time. So going back to some of the symptoms of stress, obviously, and recognizing those from our employees, a couple topics, a couple things: feeling irritation, anger or denial, lack of motivation by some of our employees, feeling tired, overwhelmed, or burnt out, feeling sad or depressed, you know, having trouble sleeping. If you're talking to the employees every single day, you kind of start noticing certain little habits that may have changed during this time. So, you know, having trouble concentrating, or maybe there might be, you know, increased use of alcohol, tobacco, or other drugs. So knowing, you know, what those stresses look like is important so that you can communicate with that employee. Also, knowing and understanding some work-related factors that can lead to stress during the pandemic. I mean, we're all going through that right now. We're all having to change. We're doing a virtual, you know, meeting today, and instead of being in person and having one-on-one conversations with, you know, with the folks around us. So, you know, there's little things here. You know, of course, every employee is worried about being exposed to the virus while at work. You know, they have to take care of their family and families' needs while they're working, while our children are going back to school and trying to learn virtually now, managing a different workload. Gosh, learning new technology. I mean, we're all becoming pros at Zoom and webinars and things like that. But all those little things can lead to stress. Again, no more important than communicating with each other, you know, trying to build the resiliency and managing work stress. A couple tips here that can help, you know, help us all in dealing with this a little bit better. And that's communicating with each other, communicating with our coworkers, with our supervisors, identifying things that are causing stress and working together to find a solution. You know, we got to stress that people are not alone, that our employees are not alone. You know, and of course, share our mental health resources that are available, you know, by our companies. We all have a lot of great information that we can pass on, and sharing that information. You know, identify the things that we do have control and things that we don't have control over. Sometimes we start dealing with a lot of things that maybe are not within our control, and knowing and understanding those things can help all of us deal with workplace stress. You know, increased sense control of developing some kind of consistency in your schedule. You know, taking breaks or taking time to stretch or exercise throughout the day. Spending more time outdoors. You know, practicing mindful techniques such as meditation, taking deep breaths, things like that are all going to help, obviously, help us deal with stress, not only for ourselves, but also for our employees, and talking through it. understanding and knowing about COVID-19 and knowing the facts about things and what happens. You know, we all have a crucial role in fighting this pandemic. I know every time we step out of our offices, we have to wear our masks and things like that. And sometimes we're not that happy about it, but it's something that we have to do so that we can, because every one of us are playing a special role in this, in helping, stop the spread. Gosh, the one thing I've done recently is I really have stopped watching the news altogether. I used to know every number when this whole thing first started, and it was really stressful. And I know some of my folks come and talk to me about it, and I just really try to stay away from TV. So, taking breaks from watching TV, maybe doing some reading or listening to other things that are not as stressful. But more importantly, I think is connecting with others, talking with people that you trust, and that's, with each other possibly, letting people know how you're feeling and how it's affecting you, and sometimes getting it out and just venting, if you will, is going to help. So those are a couple tips, that I think are crucial. I know we're talking about a lot of other topics, but right now COVID-19 is on everyone's mind. So I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about some of those things. We have some talking points that we've done here, and if everyone is interested in any of those, we're more than willing to share. Shoot me an email, and or I can send it over to Pat, and Pat can send it out. So we're all here to help each other out, and so let's do what we can to stop the spread and keep our workplace healthy, mentally healthy. Greg, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Irma. I really appreciate that. And I see a lot of people nodding in agreement. In light of current affairs, I'm just going to steal the screen sharing one more time. I want to show you guys a map here. It is unreal looking at what's going on with the fires right now. This is the Western US right here. And if we look from Colorado all the way west, of course, into California, we got a lot going on. And all of this has an impact on not only what's going on above the ground, but also eventually what's going on under the ground. And that's going to affect the water that we treat. So bear in mind that this all has a knock-on effect. So COVID-19, everybody goes home. So now we have buildings that are sitting stagnant. My team yesterday did a corrosion survey and a Legionella survey at 2 federal buildings because of concerns with contamination for a building that's been sitting idle since April. And we're going to see with the increase in evacuations, people that were working from home that are now going to go other places, there's going to be a lot of complications you all have to deal with. So now's the time for us really to shine as professionals. We're going to have customers that are more on edge than ever before, customers that are more concerned than ever before, customers that might want to fight a little more than ever before. So now's the time for us to put our best foot forward on being listeners, being kind, being reconciliatory, being willing to see other people's point of view, and being willing to breathe, relax, and say, I get it. These are stressful times. What can we do to help you? And we'll go through a little later how we make people's lives better through their water. So I'd say without further ado, let's shut me up. And Irma, would you please be kind enough to introduce our first illustrious world-traveling guest speaker?
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. So let's introduce Dave Loveday to our barbecue. Dave Loveday is WQA's Global Director of Government Affairs. Dave has overseen WQA's Government Affairs Department since 2007. He brings to WQA a vast base of expertise gained during more than 30 years of experience in the public sector. David has served as a staff member in the White House on international delegations and in numerous high-level policy positions. He administered federal disaster assistance to Ethiopia and Sudan in the 1980s and has worked as a senior campaign official on more than 10 national and statewide election campaigns. He also served as a chief spokesman and director of communication staff in the Illinois House of Representatives, communications director for the Chicago Area Regional Transport Authority, and as external affairs director for the nation's second largest tollway system. So welcome, Loveday.
Thanks, Irma. Great to be here. Well traveled on my anniversary. Actually, I'm celebrating my anniversary this month. It was when Pete hired me. I got hired, and after 2 weeks, I went to the mid-year meeting for that was my first 2 weeks at WQA. We went to your backyard, Ray. We were in Park City, Utah.
I remember meeting you there. It was a good day.
So it's been quite some time, and I've enjoyed it all. Well, since well-traveled, I haven't traveled since March. Our last trip was when we all, Greg and many of you on this meeting, were in Washington, D.C. for the D.C. fly-in. That's when we got back, and that's when they declared a pandemic. We were hearing rumblings while we were in Washington that things were going to change dramatically, which they did. So what have we been doing since then? Well, it's been the normal WQA work we've been doing with advocating and making positions on water issues. But the other thing that happened with COVID is we had to jump in and make sure our industry was deemed essential. So it was very confusing. It was something that the U.S. government and state governments have never done before. The team to start shutting the economy down and determining what would be essential, what was not. Homeland Security drafted a guideline for the states, and the states did not necessarily have to follow the guidelines. But in there, they highlighted a lot of different, not job directly by name, but a lot of categories. Plumbers was called out, but our industry was not. But if you read the categories, we were very much determined that we were deemed essential. So what we did immediately is we reached out to the White House, to Congress. I reached out to more than 30 governors' offices around the country as they were preparing to shut down and set up their own guidelines, or we were anticipating states to be doing that. So we preemptively contacted those governors and reached out to them to make sure that we were deemed essential, which in every state we were. So that was important. The next thing that we did that was sort of unique and we haven't done usually is with all the stimulus packages that were going through Congress. We were working very closely with members of Congress, but also the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on many of the stimulus packages, especially the PPP program, which I know several of our members have taken advantage of. So we were working on that. We're working on trying to extend the PPP now. We're working with the U.S. Chamber on a quote for stimulus package going through Congress. We'll see what happens. The talks are stalled. I don't think a lot's going to happen until after both of the political conventions are over in Washington. The Democrats finish up tonight, then next week it's the Republicans' turn. So I think a lot of things won't happen until after the stimulus, until the conventions are over, and we'll see where we go with the next round. But the industry, what we've done is we've taken a little bit of a proactive approach. We have formed at a very senior level a task force to look at how the industry can maybe look at a stimulus package, how we can make sure that we are included with some kind of assistance down the road. If it doesn't get done by the end of September, we're preparing ourselves for next year. And what we've done is we formed a group called the Clean Water for All. And we're looking at different legislative ideas that might be able to be used in Washington to get a program approved both at rural areas primarily and municipal areas. I know Shannon's on the task force and a few others, but a lot of the manufacturers are on it. And what we're doing is we're trying to come up with solutions. And as we dig into this a little more, we find more issues pop up that we have to address. So I think it's very good that we're doing it. I think we're being very methodical. We're developing some very, very good documents on the program. And so stay tuned. I believe in the next couple of weeks, we'll be ready to roll it out publicly about what we're going to do, and then doing an advocacy program in Washington to see if we can get it done before September 30th, which is the budget year. Or if it's not that way, we're going to be very well positioned for the next session of Congress. But let's talk about advocacy for a little while with how things are going now with COVID-19. Totally different now. And they're not taking meetings. No one's going to Washington. The capitals are closed. A lot of staffers are working from home. but we've seen it as an opportunity where we've had actually a lot more access to staffers and members. I've had several members call me directly on bills and ideas that they were proposing. We work closely with several key members of staffers that we talk regularly with. And the other thing that we do is I have a weekly call now with my counterpart at NSF and IAPA. And we talk about where we can agree and what we can work on together on different issues in Washington. So that's been a very good thing to do. So we're all looking at readjusting with the new normal, but stay tuned on the Clean Water for All. We're going to be rolling something out shortly, and then we'll be working with our team, but also with you, that who has relationships with key members of Congress that we want their support. The other thing is the SAFER program. I think a lot of you were on an email I sent out yesterday. The SAFER program is something that PWQA and WQA, you may remember, supported 2 years ago. There was a Senate Bill 200, which set up a program, put about $130 million a year for 10 years, so that's $1.3 billion, to work on getting small systems into compliance. It was a lot of work. The State Water Board has done a lot of work. The WQA and members have met with the Water Board on several occasions. We have sent in public comments on the proposed plan, the expenditure plan. And I think our comments on our efforts have paid off. The expenditure plan has been finalized on how they're going to spend the money and determine what areas are important. It's a very detailed plan, very good. And WQA has mentioned it. And I think that says a lot for WQA and the work that the PWQA has done, because having the California Water Board mention the industry as a positive, someone that needs to be included, and point of use and point of entry have been called out as one of the solutions that they're going to be looking at to get these small systems back into compliance. They're looking at short, medium, and long term. So, so this task force that we have set up it's more of not a task force, more of a stakeholder group. It's going to be informational. We'll keep you up to speed on what is going on with the program, but I'll give you a couple of key dates to think about right now. And you'll and if you want to be on the stakeholders group and you didn't get the email, you can reach out to me personally or reach out to Greg, and he can forward your email to me, and I'll make sure you get included on the stakeholder group. But keep September 10th marked on your calendar. September 10th, the California Water Board, Laurel Fire Trends agreed to do a webinar for the Pacific Water Quality Association and the WQA to talk about the program and how it's going to work and how our members can get involved. Laurel has been a big supporter of point of use and point of entry before she joined the Water Board. We're waiting for one more person. She's going to present, but also she's going to have someone else, probably I think, Randy, the person from the financial section, speak to address that webinar. So the time has not been determined yet, but but the date, she did say September 10th. And why I wanted to do September 10th was this. I wanted this webinar before the WQA mid-year meeting, which I'll talk about in a minute, because I want everyone to get up to speed on what's going on with the SAFER program, and then we can take it back and have more discussions in the breakouts, both at the dealer section and the manufacturer section and the government affairs section, and quite frankly, the board of directors meeting. We can talk about this more, because this is a great opportunity for the industry. I think it shows the recognition of the industry as a real solution. And so I think it's going to be a great thing that we can talk about, learn about, and then we can have more discussion about it afterwards. And again, any questions you have from us after the webinar, we can funnel those questions back to the Water Board. They've been very open and to having our input and answering our questions. And before COVID, like I said, we've had several meetings with the Water Board, one with where Greg and Shannon and a few others were with us. And they had half the board there because they had to keep it half to the number so they didn't have an open meeting. They had the executive director of the Water Board. They had the Secretary of Cal EPA in the meeting. And about every department head was in that meeting to discuss with us as they're preparing the document. to me, that says a lot of what they thought about our input and and what they wanted to hear from us. And so I think it's time for us that we're going to have a great opportunity, but we're all going to have to stand up, work together. And I think it's going to be great for the industry. I'd like to talk a little bit about let's go to the mid-year that we're having. Mid-year, as we know, is going to go virtual for WQA. We were going to be in Lake Tahoe, but because of everything going on, we had to cancel that. But the mid-year will be virtual. It's going to be on the 16th and 17th, a couple hours every day, sort of like what Greg said you're doing here at for the convention. The first day, I think we're going to have two really good speakers. One I'm really excited about, who's going to kick it off, is we're going to have the chief economist from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in Washington talk for an hour and take questions about what happens after COVID with the economy. Where do we see the economy going? What's going to happen? So this is the national guy from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the head economist. So I think he's going to say, yeah, I'm very interested to hear what he has to say. And like I said, he will be taking questions from the crowd, from the group. So I encourage you to sign up and join mid-year. Then we're also going to have on the second day or during that time, a dealer section and a manufacturer section, talking about many different things. A lot of it will be COVID related, but it will be a safer program and other issues, and probably also clean water for all. So those are going to be some important dates. Our Government Affairs Committee will meet later in the month. I think it's September 23rd. And I believe we've invited, and I think he will attend, Congressman Kildee out of Flint, Michigan, who's chair of the PFAS task force in the House and one of the key leaders in the House on water issues. I've asked him if he would take 15 minutes to join our Government Affairs Committee. And right now it looks like he will, pending how things are going in Washington late September. But I think that'll be an interesting update. Plus we'll talk about other issues. Finally, I want you to think about in November, we're planning, end of November, early December, we're going to plan to have an industry update after the election. See what happens both at the federal and state levels. Will there be a change in administration? Will there not? If there is, who are the possible key players coming into the new administration that may affect us? If there stays the same, how do we re-engage with the current administration? A lot of discussion there. That's going to be very important. But what we're going to do is we're going to work with you at PWQA and all the state associations. After we do about half an hour, 40 minutes of a federal big overview state U.S. issue, we're going to go into breakout rooms by state and region. So if you're a member of PWQA or California, work in California, PWQA, I've talked to Greg about this, will take a lead on a breakout talking about California issues, and Randy and Greg will possibly lead the discussion there on what are we looking at next year, preparing for next year, what do things look like, has there been any change politically? Talking about California, probably not. But we can talk about, again, leaders, who's coming in, who's going, and what should we look at, and should we try to propose some additional work, legislation, or other things. So we're going to do that with all the different state associations. So that's where we are briefly. I don't want to take up too much time. I'll take any questions if anyone has any. And thanks for the time. Any questions?
If anyone has questions, wave furiously at your camera so you can be unmuted. And wow, Dave, you wowed them and dazzled them.
Well, again, I state look for the safer program information. This could be for you all out in California a game changer. That's real money every year. Point of use and point of entry is called out. It's not that all of it's going to go that way, but I would encourage you all to really get involved, learn as much as you can. We will try to get as much information out. And again, I think the Water Board wants this to be a successful program, so stay tuned. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you very much, Dave. Irma?
All right. Well, thank you, Dave. Moving right next to our to our next guest, Randy Pollack. Randy is a partner of Churchwell White in Sacramento, California. Randy has served as the lead lobbyist on issues involving chemical policy, dietary supplements, consumer packaging, cosmetics, privacy, financial, education, and agricultural issues. He has an extensive knowledge in working with the California Department of Food and Agriculture, Cal EPA, health services, consumer services agencies, and various others. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you, Irma. I know that Senator Dodd's probably going to join us in a couple minutes, so I'm going to go through my report fairly quickly. You know, back in March, as David was indicating, you know, we're looking forward to a legislative agenda. We're looking forward to our lobbying day. There's going to be PFAS legislation regarding schools, going to work on the SAFER program, and then COVID hit. And one of the most important things that we did, as David mentioned, is making sure that this industry was deemed essential. Now, it was tweaking certain words in the Homeland Security Directive and what the governor's executive orders were going to be. We worked with the Manufacturers Association, making sure that we were included, whatever they were providing to the governor's office. So I think it was a great effort among the board members with WQA to make sure that this industry was deemed essential. Additionally, during this time, you know, we are working on the SAFER program. And, you know, everybody always wants to ask, you know, why do we have a lobbyist? Who cares about it? Do they really do anything? And I just want to give you a 30-second story of why it's important. About 5 or 6 years ago, we reached out to this community, they were called, David remind me, the Center for Water Health down in the Central Valley, Community Health Center, excuse me. And their director was Laura Firestone. And they were working on some legislation dealing with water quality, and I think water in schools and the quality in schools. So we decided to engage with them. We heard what their concerns were, and we started working with them on some of these issues. And lo and behold, Laura Firestone then gets appointed to the State Water Board as a member. And so that's how we have developed that solid relationship. That's why when we went over to the water board, we had a room full of, 8 government officials, including the Secretary of Cal EPA coming by and talking with us. And that's how it works. That's why it's important to have your involvement when you come up for lobbying days. That's why it's here to be on a consistent basis so that we get to know these people really well. So if there's an issue, they call us. That's the reason why we're included in their policy report. Now, they recognize that WQA and PWQA are now the experts in water treatment and POE, and that many of these communities need that treatment. So where are we going to turn to? Let's turn to the experts. So we look forward to working with them. And so that's where all of our time here is so valuable. You may come up here and think we don't accomplish very much in an afternoon, but what we have to do is we can't look just on that day. We're looking into the future, and that's just a demonstration of how that's all worked for us. Now, dealing with the SAFER program, I just want to mention, it will be interesting to see where the funds end up. You know, there's supposed to be about $130 million each year over the next 10 years. With the California's economy, what's going to happen with some of these funds is very unknown. At the end of this year, we are supposed to have a $6 billion surplus. That turned into a $54 billion deficit. California right now is relying on the feds to come up with $24 billion to assist California. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think you're going to see the legislature back here probably in the fall trying to determine what other cuts are going to be necessary. And unfortunately, a lot of these cuts are going to be the schools, different infrastructure projects, just because there's not going to be money. So it's going to be very important for us to be engaged in making sure that in the areas that are very crucial to the importance of keeping California going, that our voices are being heard. As Greg mentioned, you're going to have many buildings that are left empty for a while. You're going to have, with the fires, you're going to have issues there. So being a voice here is going to be very important. So we continue to reach out on a daily basis to talk with committees, to talk with members, a lot of Zoom calls like all of you. And just to keep the word out as we're here as a resource. We're here if you want to know about someone in your local community who may be able to help out. And so that's what we want to do going into the fall. We want to see if we can do some Zoom calls with some legislators, get a handful of people from that area, do a quick phone call with the local legislator, let them know what you do, you're here as a resource, and that you're happy to help them in any way possible. So we will continue, to be your voice up here in Sacramento. And I know everybody always wants to know, okay, what's the inside story? What's really going on in the politics in the Capitol? And, right now we're seeing the fights between the state assembly and the state senate. They don't like each other, so they're battling over each other, what bills they should pass. Today, you had the governor, come out and unfortunately had to admit that, he didn't take a pay cut when he said he was going to take a pay cut 3 months ago, while the rest of the state government took a pay cut. And it was by accident that he forgot to take the 5% pay cut, or 10%. But what's very interesting is every other constitutional officer except one didn't take a pay cut either. So of course today, now you're seeing a flurry of, press releases. Oh, we're making it retroactive to July 1st. It was an accident. We didn't realize that occurred. Of course, I'm going to take a pay cut. And of course, this governor has been under a lot of strain lately. He started off really well with the COVID, everyday press conferences. He was doing a very good job, I think, trying to settle down California, laying out a game plan. But now you've had, the public health director resign because there's inaccurate numbers being reported on the COVID. You have the rolling blackouts that he's now got an investigation going, trying to figure out what happened there. We have the budget that he's dealing with. We have the fires that we're dealing with, in Southern California, Northern California. And then I just got a text alert that he's not going to be appearing at the convention this evening. He was supposed to be speaking tonight, but he is not going to be speaking because of the fires, and his attention needs to be directed towards there. So we will continue to engage. So that's a little bit of the background of stuff that we all talk about here in Sacramento. That probably means nothing out there in the rest of California.
Randy, can I interrupt you for a second? I apologize. We have been graced with the presence of Bill Dodd.
Go right
He's
ahead.
looking dapper as ever. So we're very sensitive to your time, Senator Dodd, and we're grateful that you're taking the time to talk to us. So
Well,
we'll give it to you.
Well, thank you very much, and I just appreciate all you guys are doing. All these fires, 125, actually it's more than 150, more than half of the acreage of the fires, which is not a good time. And so I'm just moving from the Napa Emergency Operations Center, moving into Fairfield to theirs. But I figured I could do this and multitask because it's PWQA. And you guys all should know or do know just the great affinity that I have for your organization, having been a past president, and just delighted to take the time to talk to you about what we're doing. It's something that is such a strange year, as you all know, and you've really been in my thoughts. I can't even imagine doing the work that you do on a daily basis, during a pandemic. And really, that's part of my charge when I'm looking at bills and everything else. And there's a lot of bills that I might have even voted for, in a weak moment in the past, but anything that adversely impacts business or even close to it right now is something that I just think we need to do this another time, another place, and let's let these businesses breathe after being so incredibly impacted by what has never impacted our society in well over a century. So that's first and foremost in my mind. I had I believe it was like 21 bills that were in play when this came up in March. And we in the Senate, at least, it didn't really work that well in the Assembly. We all decided to focus, if our bills weren't focused on COVID, public health, homelessness, affordable housing, and wildfires, that we wouldn't do it. So I went down to about 6 bills, and happy to do so. And we're just about ready to finish this legislative session. I'll be showing up on Monday and be there for 7 straight days while we finish our, what would that be? That would be 2019, 2020 legislative session.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. We are so grateful to have you with us, and for the work that you do, and for remembering us little guys back in the water industry.
Come on now.
Bill did a phenomenal job building a water treatment dealership and going from there to bigger and better things. And he's one of the people that I truly look up to and admire. So, Bill, anything that you think we should be doing as far as our legislative outreach recommendations for us?
Well, as you probably know by now, you guys, when you changed up, your lobbyist, that you're with the the A team here, and so I would just absolutely do what they're recommending you do. They're smart at this stuff; they get it, and I would suspect that unless there's some really specific bills that are really important to your industry, to the water industry, currently, probably the best thing you could do is start building a base for political action, in the years to come. So, because we're not going to have a shortage of things to do. I'm certain you're not either. In the next legislative session.
Wise words. Thank you very much. Bill, I don't want to tie up too much of your time. Thank you again for your ongoing support of PWQA. Please be safe. Try not to breathe in too much smoke and keep doing the great job that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks. And, I just appreciate, last year, I think it was last year, I was able to join you at your barbecue with Senator Steve Bradford. I'm sorry that hopefully in the future we'll be able to get back to doing something like that. And I'd love to join you again. And, I just think, for those members that are out there, they're paying dues at PWQA. This is, something that I've always believed in. And, I kind of got my start in governmental affairs by showing up in Sacramento to help PWQA. So your dues dollars are going to good use.
Bill, thank you as always. And I tell you, a handshake is worth a lot more than it used to be before March. It's going to be a whole new world, and thank you for being there with us.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, that's a privilege indeed. And, it's just incredible to see someone like Senator Dodd who's walked such an incredible path in water. And for me, being young in the water industry, I'm barely 25 years into it. I really enjoy watching people who have just taken it all the way along and gone to do amazing things to improve lives. Randy, did you have any more comments for the association? Did you want to talk at all about the SB 54 and 1080 single-use packaging?
Okay. First, I just want to say, as most of you know on the phone, or I should say on the call, that Senator Dodd is like a rock star here in Sacramento. He's one of those mod Democrats who's very accessible. You're able to go in and he's got a good staff that you can work with, understanding what the issues are. But he's had a rough couple of years, with the fires going on up in Napa. And so that has consumed so much of his time. And so I think it was just great for him to, be able to pop in a little bit before you could tell he's on his way back to the district to see what's going on. And I suspect that the governor will probably make his way up there sometime this afternoon, for a tour with him. So, just a great person. And quickly, there's one piece of legislation out there dealing with packaging. And this is whatever you package any of your products in would be subject to this proposed law. Initially, it was material neutral, and the bill was just amended to make it plastic only packaging. So what that has done, it's brought in a lot of opposition because what this would do would require packaging to meet certain recycling rates beginning in 2026. So if you have a PET package, you would have to meet a rate of, say, 40%. And if that rate wasn't met, you could be fined for not meeting that rate. And of course, when you're a business, you a lot of times don't have control over the packaging requirements because you're buying it through, a third party. So there's a large coalition opposing it. We believe that packaging has to be addressed. I think all consumer brands realize that. but this bill does not provide an infrastructure for it, does not provide any sort of financial ways of paying for a program. So we will be opposing this bill this year. We have a letter, we're part of a coalition letter. Greg has a copy of it. If anybody would like to see a copy, contact myself or Greg. We're happy to supply you a copy of the reasons why we're opposing.
Everyone who's on the PWQA mailing list has received that letter. So everybody should be up to date with that now.
Okay. And that's a report from Sacramento.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you very much, Randy.
Thank you. So
before I launch into a little technical discussion, does anybody have any questions, comments, any issues that they would like to bring up? This is the sad thing about doing this via Zoom conference. We're not standing over a barbecue with Sid barbecuing a bunch of Pentair brats. So that's kind of weird. But it's really fun getting to at least see everybody face to face via the digital medium and raise a glass of cool, clean, purified water. Okay, I don't see any hands or any messages. So what I'd like to spend the next few minutes just talking about is PFAS or PFAS or PFOA. And the reason we're going to talk about it is this is becoming a greater issue, especially on the West Coast. We're not going to go into a huge hour-long presentation. We're just going to cover a few basic points. And then the part that's really important to me is the last few slides, which is about the ethics of selling solutions and making sure that we're living the higher law and we're doing things better than those guys. So I'm going to share a slide presentation really quickly with you, and we'll launch into a quick and dirty introduction to perfluorinated compounds, or PFCs. And we're going to talk a little bit about the impact that these have on us as an industry and as human beings. And honestly, it's disturbing. So you should all be able to see the slide on the screen right now. And the first concept to introduce is what's known as a persistent organic pollutant, or a POP. And this is important because you're going to hear this a lot more. You're going to hear more and more about persistent organic pollutants. These are organic compounds. They're really difficult to break down. They're typically human-made, and they can travel far. They can get caught in algae that goes airborne. They can get caught on dust. They can get stuck on clothing. They can go all over. And what's really important is the last two concepts on the slides, which is they are bioaccumulative, they build up in our body, and they have a biomagnifying, they're additive effects. If a fish consumes algae that contains perfluorinated compounds, those compounds build up in the flesh of the fish. If you eat that fish, they build up in your flesh at a magnified level. Not cool. And so when it comes to persistent organic pollutants, one of the biggest, scariest ones that we're hearing about, and this is something that Dave and Shannon Murphy and Frank DeSilver and a few other people and I met with back in DC. We talked to Senator Shaheen's office about the attention being given to PFAS. PFAS is the Teflon chemical. And so you're going to hear more and more about people talking about Teflon in the water. And that's not really true. This is a precursor. It's a chemical that's used to produce Teflon and nonstick products. It's also used to produce Teflon tape. It's used to produce Gore-Tex. It's used to produce a bunch of things. And if you look on the screen, you'll see it was first used in the 50s. It was first detected in human blood in the late 60s. As early as 1979, DuPont realized there was a problem. And in the early 2000s, the CDC found various perfluorinated compounds in 98% of the blood samples that they tested. And that sampling group that they tested is broadly representative of the US population. So what we can interpret from that is that most of us, if not all of us, have perfluorinated compounds in our bodies at some degree. Now, does that mean they're safe? Does that mean they're dangerous? Well, the science is still out there. There's a lot of studies that are suggesting there are issues. As water treatment professionals, we need to be on the cutting edge of this information. So let's look at how these compounds are made, what they look like, and then most importantly, how to get them out of the water. So the key to a perfluorinated compound is fluorine. Fluorine is the heart of this. And there was a saying coined by 3M 70 years ago, and it says better living through chemistry. Fluorine is one of those better living through chemistry concepts. Fluorine chemistry has changed our lives. It has given us a host of consumer goods. And so when we look at these perfluorinated compounds, and you'll see there's all these big, long names. Don't worry about the long names. Just think about the acronyms. And if you really don't want to remember anything, just remember PFC, perfluorinated compounds. It's the catch-all for all of them. And so you don't need to worry about learning and understanding every little piece of minutia of long chain versus short chain, or going through the chemical formulation, or looking at the fluorine backbone. Something that's fun if you want to kick it up a notch is looking at the chain chemistry of this fluorine, which is really what's exciting about these compounds. If you look at this, you'll see you've got long and short chains, and what makes them long and short is the number of fluorine bonds that are on that chain. And the longer the chain, the more interesting chemistry it has as far as what we can do with it in industry. And so we're using these things in industry all over the place, but exposure to these things has been shown to have some really interesting health effects. So let's scare ourselves for a minute, but let's remember we can scare ourselves, but we can never, ever scare our customers. So what's the risk of perfluorinated compounds? The first is in humans, there's data that indicates a correlated relationship. So correlation means something happened, it was there. It's not a causative relationship yet. So we're not saying if you consume this, you will get thyroid disease, but it sure is suspicious that that PFAS combo is there and other perfluorinated compounds are there. So we need to be careful how we articulate these things, because we're not doctors, we're not medical professionals, we are water quality improvement professionals. So there is a correlated relationship between high cholesterol, thyroid disease, reduced semen motility, childhood asthma in humans. In animal models, there's a pretty strong correlation to a number of cancers, but not in human models quite just yet, because we didn't know there was a problem to look for yet, and it takes longer to see things in humans than in animals. Something to remember is the various forms of these perfluorinated compounds persist for different lengths of time. So PF hex, 8 years out in the wild. Without even trying to preserve it, it's viable for 8 years. PFOS, 5 years out in the wild. PFOA, 2.5 years out in the wild. This is their minimum viable lifespan. It could go longer, but it would be at least this much. Now, what's particularly concerning about this family of chemicals and why there is so much interest in this is this family of chemicals is misogynistic. It affects women to a higher level than it affects men. And there are both correlative and causative relationships to osteoarthritis, decreased fertility, increased risk of high blood pressure, preeclampsia, lower birth weights. And then, of course, the scary part that freaks us all out is it can transfer through the umbilicus. It can transfer from mother to baby. And it can transfer in utero, and it could transfer through lactation. So this is something that we're starting to scratch the surface of. Legislators have got excited about this. They're putting rules in place to milk the federal coffers to get money out. And the thing we need to bear in mind is how these things get into water and where they come from, because it'll surprise you in California how persistent they are and how prevalent they are. So where do we find them? In municipal testing, 30 US states have already found them. They're found in surface water, they're found in ocean water. In Europe, they've been found in various bottled waters, juices, drinking waters. In fact, 27% of the water supplies in France were found to have positive levels of perfluorinated compounds. They can transfer through the air. We breathe them in dust particles. So if water containing perfluorinated compounds is used to irrigate in the Central Valley and the wind picks up and blows dust around, when you breathe in that dust, you're then breathing those compounds into your lungs. If you cook on a Teflon pan, when you heat that pan, you are releasing a small amount of perfluorinated compounds. Suffice it to say, I don't own any Teflon cookware anymore. But that's my personal preference. I'm not telling you what to do. We also find them in our foods. We also find them in a ton of consumer products. Something down to as simple as the microwave popcorn, the lid of the pizza box to keep the cheese from sticking. We find them all over the place. And so here's the complicating factor. This thing is everywhere because it makes life more convenient, but we can find it in water. And so the EPA has a really, really tough job. The EPA has to set rules on risk. So, you know, when you think about risk management, we want to make sure that we take risk out completely in business. One of the things we're always looking at is how to mitigate risk or how to minimize risk, how to lower our risk face. But at the end of the day, just existing is dangerous because there's a 100% guarantee at some point you are going to die. The sun is trying to kill you with neutrinos. Oxygen is trying to kill you with oxidation, and your body itself is reducing its telomeres and it's self-destructing on the daily. So everything's going to kill you. At some point, you're going to die. And EPA's job is really difficult. In fact, Mike Mormino, Dave Loveday, Chris Wilker is on the call, and I visited with the EPA secretary last year, Dave. And it was really interesting talking to him about the administrator, talking to him about how they set these rules. And this flow chart here is how they set the rules. They look at where these things come from. They look at where they can be found. They look at the exposure routes. They look at how people can get hurt. And then they look at what are considered dangerous dosages. And so with all of this in mind, they came up with one guideline. And the guideline was 70 parts per trillion combined concentration at the federal level. And you'll notice that it's not an MCL. It's not a primary contaminant. And the reason the EPA has resisted doing that is because as soon as it becomes a primary contaminant, the lawsuits will start and they probably will never stop. One of the major uses of perfluorinated compounds is as a foam reducing agent in what's called AFFs, or aqueous firefighting foams. Every single DoD installation, Department of Defense installation, since the early 1960s has been setting and putting out fires for practice and for real on the daily. And every airport in the United States has been practicing firefighting measures, and they've been using aqueous firefighting foams. And typically they set the fire, they put it out, and all of that firefighting foam is left on the ground or it's hosed away to a sewer. And so that ends up somewhere, and it's persistent. And when it's cold and dark, these things can persist for 20 and 30 years. And so we see this everywhere. So the DoD is a big target for legislators, and more consumers are becoming aware of the issues. Now, the big thing to bear in mind is this is very much a city level issue right now, but our consumers understand that the city does the best job they can with the budget that they're given, and they deliver what I would call minimum standard water. It's water that's not going to kill you today. It's good water. It's better than most of the water in other countries in the world, but we can still do better. To quote Chris Wilker, we can make good water great. And that's what our industry does. We improve what's already good. And this is important in our messaging. We're not saying the city water is bad. City water is fantastic, but we can make it even better. California Water Board has released their guidelines, and their guideline based on a quarterly running annual average is 10 parts per trillion for PFOA and 40 parts per trillion for PFOS. So it's a seventh and almost half of the federal guideline. Now, the bad thing here is current state of testing technology is we can barely test for 20 parts per trillion with most testing equipment, let alone 10 parts per trillion. So this is something that we're setting laws that transcend current technology. When we were at the EPA lab, they were telling us that even the cologne or the perfume that the lab workers were wearing would affect their test results. And so they learned there were certain personal cosmetics they couldn't wear, or else they'd offset the results. That's how sensitive this testing is. There's 2 links on the screen. We will share the links with the post-meeting recording. The first is waterboards.ca.gov. You can see the current regulations. And then that long link on the bottom is an Excel spreadsheet of all the tests that were performed where they found positive perfluorinated compound results in the state of California. And the list is long, extremely long. Now, again, we got to remember, it's not our job to scare people to buy stuff. It's our job to teach people and to help them get what they want and what they need for their water. So how do we treat this water? So there's a number of ways we can in the scope that we work in. We're not going to talk about city level or small systems. It's just POU and POE. We can oxidize using AOP, which is pretty much out of the scope of what most people on this call do. So we're not really going to dig into that. The other is anion exchange or sorption or carbon. And then of course, POU, we can use RO. And then there are certain dedicated anion filters and of course, carbon. So in the interest of time, we're going to skip over the AOP section. We'll dig into anion exchange. There's a lot of really good anion resin out there. Various manufacturers, I don't need to tell you who they are. You all know who they are. And the good ones are members of the PWQA and very active as such. And they have really good products that are effective at addressing these alkyl compounds. And to some degree, some of the compounds are exchanged for chlorides. To some degree, they're absorbed. And so that's something to look at when you're designing a treatment solution. This might be a one-time use disposable resin bed, or it might be a regenerable resin bed. For what we're doing on POE, most of them are disposable right now. We're not regenerating. Another is activated carbon, a high-quality, properly treated carbon, and most importantly, certified NSF, IAPMO, WQA. It has to be certified for what it can do. Just throwing a carbon filter, just because it's a burned coconut shell, doesn't mean it's going to do the job. Because there's a lot of competing things in the water that are going to fight for the carbon's attention for those sorption sites. And so it's really important that you get a good quality carbon that can react quickly and that you design your system with adequate contact time. From testing that's being done out there, and I can back it up from field experience, 25 to 30 minutes of contact time is not unrealistic. So when you think about that with the size of your column that you've got to work with, that's a lot of contact. So the preference is point of use with a really high quality RO that has all the appropriate certifications, and then polishing it with multiple stages of activated carbon. And so the major manufacturers, the franchise groups, all have some very good products out there. The independents have some very good products out there. So it's a good, nice, even playing field for the customers that are out there, where you can deliver an affordable solution to them when they want it. Now, the most important part to me is the next 3 slides. When we sell a solution, we have to look at doing a layered treatment approach. Right now, we haven't found any data that supports absorption of PFOS through your skin, or PFOA or PFCs of any kind through your skin. So why treat it at the whole house if you don't need to? Consider a layered treatment approach. It's typically going to be part of a broader solution. You might be doing whole house softening, you might be doing scale control, you might be doing carbon filtration. Don't sell a perfluorinated compound solution as the only thing. Always use it as part of the rest of it. And what's really important that I see so many people miss is be sure to understand before you sell what the maintenance is required. These things don't last forever. They do need to be replaced at the designated interval. And you need to make sure that you set up a maintenance program, and smart dealers want maintenance programs. I mean, we like being back in our customer's home. We want to see that customer as often as possible. So maintenance programs are crucial, both for your customer's health and of course they're good for business. And a personal peeve of mine, let's make sure when we're selling them, we tell the truth, we underpromise, we overdeliver, and we don't try to scare our customers. Let's make sure that we're being pragmatic and honest in our presentation, sharing information without creating fear. Our customers deserve the respect of an honest sales presentation. And honestly, I don't think anybody on this call who's taken the time to be a PWQA member, who's taken the time to participate in our activities would ever be this kind of salesperson. But just a good reminder for us why we're not like the other guys. And to close, there's 3 reasons that we're looking for every time we engage with a client to help them with a water quality solution. Number 1, make their life better with better water. Number 2, create and sustain a lifetime service relationship. And number 3, earn that reasonable and sustainable profit that you deserve to stay in business to help your customer for next year. So that was the quick and dirty on perfluorinated compounds. There will be significantly more training on PFCs at our October event. We've got a few vendors. We have a resin vendor lined up. We have a whole house point of entry cartridge solution lined up. We have a number of people that are going to give us training, both accredited and unaccredited training on how to treat this properly and how to do business better in this new normal that we're facing. So everybody, we went over by 14 minutes. That's entirely my fault. Thank you for indulging me.
Hey, Greg, I'd just like to add a few points.
Dave, go right ahead.
If we can. EPA has been moving fairly quickly on PFAS. They have an action plan that we've supported. They have to move very carefully and slowly, methodically, as Greg showed the chart, because they want to make sure they get it right. The challenge for EPA and us, quite frankly, is what the states are doing. States have moved ahead of the federal agencies, and like California, are setting their own MCL levels at some cases very low levels, which will determine if they're detectable or not. But the important thing, these are enforceable levels now at the state level. So every state's doing it a little bit differently. I want to say about 25 to 30 states have set levels. More are going to come. It's only because this is a hot topic right now, both at the federal and state level. There is money being put in the defense authorization bill for a military base, because as Greg pointed out, that they're looking at remediation in certain places, because that seems to be a target where everyone can agree to send money to the DOD with that. But I just sent Greg a press release from the EPA today regarding PFAS. They're putting $5 million to do studies with Indiana University, Purdue University, and University of Georgia. And the interesting thing about these studies, Greg, is you talk about it's mostly municipal. This is a focus on rural agriculture and private wells. Private wells for EPA is something brand new. I think it shows the commitment by the EPA that they are trying to take a serious look at this. We'll see what happens if there's a change in the administration. But the states don't have to go through the same hurdles at the federal level. So they've been able to act on their own. And I will tell you the one thing that the takeaway I had from it, and you can correct me, Greg, my one takeaway when we were at the lab in Cincinnati with the EPA is how far behind they were on the study of PFAS. I was stunned that they were just starting to get it going. And they were saying, any feedback, any information you want to give us, please, we're looking for more information. So it's moving very quickly, but at the same time, the EPA has to move very carefully.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And you know, EPA, it's funny watching the news cycle, because, you know, different political slant things a certain way. But I tell you, meeting with Administrator Wheeler, I was very impressed. This is a very intelligent human being who's not letting politics get in the way of protecting people. And they're taking a very pragmatic approach. And they have to be very measured and careful. And we as an industry need to remember that we need to be very measured and careful. We don't want to ever be like those tin men from that movie, the aluminum siding salespeople. We don't want to be those guys. We want to be the consummate professional, under promise, over deliver, and really look out for our customers. But our customers are going to be asking us more and more questions about these things. And it's really important that we learn and understand. So again, plug for October. Be there, learn. There's going to be a lot of stuff to learn about and a lot of cutting edge information to learn about, particularly on how to deal with these things when you've got regulators involved, and when you have a customer who's terrified about their health, and how to comfort and calm them and be there as a resource and not take advantage of them. So thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate it. I'm humbled, as always. Anytime I get together with a PWQA meeting, I'm humbled by the people that are willing to take time and spend time with us all together. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for your character. Thank you for your integrity. And thank you for your commitment to doing the job right. There's a lot of free riders in this industry who don't join any organizations, and they just go along, do their thing, and they benefit from all the hard work that you guys do as members. And it's a sad reality, but you know, it's so rewarding working with people who are motivated and people who care. So thank you all for who you are. I salute you. With that said, Irma, do you have any closing comments or any thoughts, words of wisdom you'd like to share with our team?
No, Greg, you know, just echo your comments. Thank you very much for everything that you do every single day, and you know, the entire membership. And we'll see you all in October.
Thank you, Irma. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Get out there and help people get more, better water. Bye-bye, everyone.